In an era marked by complex and elusive global conflicts where the battlefields have transcended physical boundaries, a crucial need arises: the need for knowledge and insight to navigate the intricate web of fifth-generation warfare.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Tonight I want to talk to you on a subject of deep concern to all Americans and to many people in all parts of the world.
Put your hands up and come outside. Come outside. Everybody in the house needs to come outside.
Themselves. They all work together.
For the entire 2 hours.
Stealing personal data.
Oh my goodness.
For the first time, the U.S., joined by European allies and NATO partners, publicly condemned China for malicious cyber hacks and directly hiring hackers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Monica Adams, your host, and alongside the president of Grunt Style Foundation, Tim Jensen. So great to see you. We have Boone Cutler, who is a retired U.S. Army sergeant, a veteran activist, and the author of Citizen's Guide to Fifth-Generation Warfare. That in and of itself, I want to see a raise of hands of how many of you have heard the terminology fifth-generation warfare. 3 of you in the audience. So we've got to start with that. Tim and Boone, what is fifth-generation warfare?
Well, I think the question is, like, we all know something's going on, but what is it? Like, what is exactly happening? We are in this information age where everything is being delivered to this tiny device that is what we call a cell phone. And we know that when that cell phone is not in use, it picks up conversation. Hell, my business, I sit on the chief brand officer of Grunt Style LLC. Right? We market using advertising, and the way that we advertise is by keywords, advertisements through social media, that are listening on the conversations that you guys are having in your personal lives to pick up trends, and so I can market towards you. This is the world that we live in. I'm one business of many, and this is quite fearsome in the way that we can be now manipulated in the way we think, what we believe, the way information is served to us through this tiny device, and now we're being persuaded, right? Now we're being coerced. We're being served misinformation, malinformation, disinformation of all sorts of varieties, from our friends that are sharing things that they see that they think is great and they want to share with others. They're sharing things from other governments, right, that are dumping things into our social media space, that are manipulating political thought, right, and forcing us to be more partisan in the way that we believe, right? We can look out the windows and look into our very communities. Are we divided as we may, that the media presents us to be? Absolutely not. I think we are tighter as a country than we've ever been, but we are so persuaded by the way that we are engaging in the environments around us that has now become a problem, and we've become partisan, and this country is now divided in ways that can we get back from? I don't know, but we need to start looking at fifth-generation warfare as a method and a means of what is happening within our country from internal and external forces, and that is the clear fact of the world we live in.
And we're putting these cell phones in the hands of children at a very early age, so we feel like the manipulation is happening from children on up?
Absolutely. Like, I'm 45 years old, right? Of the Generation X, the last generation, or the only generation that has a foot in the pre-digital side and pre-technology side, and one side in technology. So everybody behind us is growing up with this as their first form of interaction, right? How many of us have children that are putting a YouTube Kindle in front of them and say, hey, just watch this for a few minutes, I got something to take care of. We're all doing it, it's okay, right? But we need to do better, right? Because we're conditioning, we're putting people into a behavioral box, and that is a problem, right? Because now we're not forcing people to be critical thinkers, we're forcing them to be absorbers of information. And what does that information do? Well, we all have confirmation bias to some reasonable degree, and the things that we're seeing and the things that are going on in our head, we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? But all that could be misinformation, it could be disinformation, it could be malinformation, and we're making judgments off of that, which is affecting those of us around us who are raising our children with these ideas. So we need to really step up our game.
It's interesting, Tim, I worked in television and radio for 30 years, and we're talking about the media. People blame the media, saying we're manipulating. We have information that's being guided to us. And then you mentioned something, and I don't know if it scares everyone, but when you're told that this is constantly listening to us, that doesn't freak you out? I mean, I would think it should. And then does that go beyond our country into other countries? People have heard, we reported on it, to watch out for TikTok. Your kids are on it, that's the thing that they're on. I've never gotten on it because I was scared by the information that I was told. Bring in Boone here, you obviously authored a book about it, and that is what you're trying to get across here today, is that that's where the battlefield is.
Right, the battle space today is not the physical battle space where a lot of warfighters are used to fighting on land, in buildings and tunnels, through the air, land and sea type of thing. Today's battle space is in the cognitive battle space. And so it's in every one of your heads, it's in every one of our heads. And it's going to continue because that's where they can make the most money without having to succumb to getting casualties. Now, we talk about these little things being used as advertising and things like that, but it's not just the phones, it's other things too. It's what you see on the television, it's what your friend tells you. Because if I want to get you, I'm not going to get you, I'm going to get the 3 people closest to you because they're the influencers of you. It's about influencing the influencers that influence you and not letting them know you're influencing them. So this goes on and on and on and on, and it's in our world today, it's not just the United States. Right now you're talking about where does this information go? This information goes into data sets. These data sets, the largest curator of information in the world right now is the CCP. And they curate these data sets. With these data sets, they train AIs, these AI systems. These AI systems do things like search for keywords that people are saying. They do a lot of things. AI-driven psychological programming is a very real thing that nobody knows anything about. Nobody's talking about it. They'll talk about AI with regards to robots and things of that nature, but they're really not talking about what's happening to you right now, what's happening to your kids right now. And I'll just tell you, the worst thing you can do to your children right now when it comes to these digital platforms is use them as a babysitter. It's a bad idea. You're teaching your children that these things are going to raise you, and I'm not. You got to be the leader of your family and make sure you're raising your kids on your own.
I was watching a video with you, Boone, and you talked about polarization is the enemy.
Yes. Yeah, polarization is the enemy, because if we're looking at this arc to destruction, as we call it, we start with polarization. Once I polarize you, once you're polarized, well, then your critical thinking shuts down. Once your critical thinking shuts down, then you're going to protect the message you've been given, and you're going to spread it around without even thinking. How do I polarize you? That's through emotions, making you emotional. Emotionality causes polarization. Once we go from polarization, then we go to tribalization. Look around you now. How many groups do you see out there that are tribalizing? My group's better than your group sucks, you're this, you're that. We're tribalization. Once from tribalization, we go to dehumanization. And then it starts getting really scary, because after dehumanization comes killing. So polarization is the enemy because it starts that path. The path of polarization, tribalization, dehumanization, and then killing. This is what we have to stay away from, and the way we stay away from it is by using our critical thinking skills and understanding that your neighbor is not your enemy. Your neighbor is just as confused as you are. They're inside of some filter bubble, some feedback loop, just like you are. They're confused. They think they're on the crazy train going to crazy town like everybody else, and they don't know what to call it. This is the form of warfare that we're all dealing with right now. This is 5th generation warfare.
It's interesting, in this video that I watched of you, Boone, you talk about going all the way back. So if we look at generations before us, the brown shirts and the young people, and that's what I mentioned before about the targeting and giving the tablets and then pushing it away. That's the babysitter, getting into the young minds and pushing objectives through their minds. And then they're coming and questioning to the parents, but then they're already formulating their own minds and saying, well, this is what I'm hearing, this is what my belief is. And the enemy is our own mind, right?
AI-driven psychological programming, people think about psychological operations, which is my background. Psychological operations primarily is influencing attitudes to change behavior. It's your existing beliefs, but we're going to reframe it for you. We're going to help you see it a different way, so you have a different behavior, because all behavior is driven by your attitudes towards a situation. But in psychological programming, we're actually talking about building the structures of the brain, how to think, what you can say, what you cannot say, what is right, what is wrong. This is the stuff a parent should do, not a machine. This is a thing that you should do in your family. This isn't something that should be shaped by schools. This isn't something that should be shaped by machines or computers or anybody else. This is mom and dad should be doing that. Unfortunately, mom and dad are addicted to AI. They're addicted to that digital crack every day. They're on the phones, and just so they can stay addicted to their addiction, they get their kids addicted to it. This is the cycle that has to really be looked at and stopped. I challenge everybody in here, during waking hours, put your phone away, turn it off, put it in a Faraday bag for 2 to 4 hours. If you don't have a job that requires you to be on the internet, see if you can just remove the apps from your phone. Then don't go to them. Have your recess time, maybe for a half hour at lunch and an hour before bedtime. The rest of the time, step away from it. If you can't step away from it, you start making excuses to yourselves like, well, I got to do this. And this is important because, well, that sounds a lot like addiction talk. If you hear that addiction talk, then you need to make a self-assessment and decide what you're going to do about it, because now you know.
Yeah.
What are you most fearful about with fifth generation warfare?
Well, there's a lot of fears. I think the biggest one is losing the ability of critical thinking, right? We probably one of the biggest aspects of the American culture that we have going for us is our ability to be critical thinkers. It's got us through some of the biggest conflicts of the modern era. Decisive thinking, right? We are removing that by introducing mal and disinformation into these conversation bubbles, as Boone refers to it, we are significantly putting ourselves into a dangerous era. Let's look at the power of this, for example, Cambridge Analytica, right? If you guys don't know that name, it's a data company that was used in the 2016 elections, right? It was the data company that was predominantly used to put the president at that time into office, right? And they were living in Facebook and social media by driving certain behaviors to put and serve certain information up in front of people. That is voter coercion. That is a problem within our country. Now, it happened on one side it doesn't matter what political paradigm you're on, left, right, or center, it just happened to happen on the right. And then it happened on the left. And now we're stuck in this balance between of garbage, and we're having to sift through this with no media that can give us any type of clear and concise reporting, because everything is being reported through anonymous, whistleblower, or this, that, and the other. There's no clear conversation any longer. It's all obfuscating this bigger conversation of it's a war for your mind, and now we have to cut the middle, cut it in half, as Boone was saying, by tribalizing everybody. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to dehumanize it all, right? Because now we're sitting here all thinking about what does the 2024 elections look like for this country, right? And we're polarizing ourselves into these little tribes. And when that thing explodes, what do we have then? Well, we'll have the killing, because we've seen it in countries all around the world in history as long as we can look back in human time. And this is not new, but the tools in which is being put forward, that's what's new. And we don't understand it just yet, but there are people that do, and those people are manipulating it in ways that are very dangerous for the population of this country.
Absolutely, and we look at the headlines in the news, turning against ourselves, what's in our hearts, flag burning, stomping on it. When did we have such disrespect for our country? Not even knowing why we're doing it, following mentality instead of leading. You mentioned polarization to tribalization, dehumanization, killing. The biggest thing that I think is the most dangerous of this is the utter lack of respect that we have for each other because of being led, whatever side you fall on or in the middle. It's that leading mentality, right, Boone?
It is the leading mentality. It's been going on a lot longer. It's been rising for a long time, a lot longer than my good friend was talking about here. The first time we started seeing these types of techniques being used in elections was 2008. And then it's just they've gotten better. Like with any fighting skill, you get better over time. And it doesn't matter what side we're talking about. There's no right or left anymore. It's the uniparty, and it's the rest of us who want America to be free. So it's not even that thing. But if we don't, take that time and really figure this out, because like you're saying, we're not that far from the killing phase. We're just not that far. You may think you are, but you're not. Look at these spontaneous riots that are happening with kids. Kids. I know of 2 in the last 6 months where kids just completely unruly, just taking to the streets and going nuts over a PlayStation or whatever it is. Next thing you know, cops are getting cut and taking their guns taken away. Okay? This is part of that game. This is part of that game. There is a way to do the sentiment analysis to understand. They have something right now, we wrote about it in How to Fight Artificial Intelligence. The sentiment analysis, you can take anybody, understand what their sentiment is, understand what their feeling is, and then through these systems, you can actually create a predictability. So if they are exposed to X stimulus, it will create Y reaction. And this is going on over and over again, and it's done individually. It used to be done in the past by demographic, then it became psychographic, which is individual, and now it's individual person. There's actually something called personalized propaganda. That has not existed before. It exists now, and nobody's talking about it because they just don't know about it. And personalized propaganda means I'm going to get to you the way you're susceptible, I'm going to get to you the way you're susceptible, and so on and so forth. And I don't care if that person is susceptible in a different way, I can push their buttons the same way I can push you and get you both going in the same direction. And that's how this happens. That's why it feels like we're on the crazy train going to crazy town.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that people would not want to admit that they're being brainwashed?
Well, nobody wants to admit that, but I do think that it's not hard to get people to admit. I think everybody's speaking about it routinely, saying, what is going on? This feels crazy. I don't understand. What is going on? I think people know that there's something going on. They just don't know what to call it, and they don't understand that it is part of a military operation.
So you're wanting to bring it to attention. You've got the books. People would read that. They're going to form their opinion. We're going to find out what the opinion is after hearing this. Then what is the action plan? What do we do to move forward? Because we're talking about dangerous territory. We're talking about literally a warfare forming right before our eyes.
Well, the first thing you can do to take action is realize, drop your own polarization. Learn to be likable again. There's people out there that you don't want to approach or you don't want to talk to because you think that they're not going to like you for some reason. Well, that's been bred into you. The truth is, they probably want you to approach them. It's really not that big of a deal. We're segregating ourselves from ourselves, and that has to stop. We have to have good conversation and express, hey, you feel like something's kind of funky around here? Yeah, and everybody goes, yeah, I feel like something's funky around here. What do you think that is? Well, I don't know. And they're going to have their reason for that. And just listen. Just listen to each other. I think we've stopped doing that. We've gotten so used to being behind a keyboard and a screen that we've lost the humanity of humans. And we need to get back to feeling that sense of humanity, because a lot of times when you're talking online, you don't know who you're talking to. Mm-hmm. You don't know if you're talking to a bot. You don't know if you're talking to a squad of bots, and that really happens. And then they kind of get you into a group, and then it becomes forcing in-group, out-group dynamics. If 7 of us are in here, and 6 of us feel a certain way and want to do something, that 7th one is against it, more than likely they're going to go along with the crowd. And so these are all just forms of psychology that are used to weaponize against you in a way you don't see it. We call it the panopticon effect, meaning they can see you, but you can't see them. It's the invisible hand.
The bot aspect, I mean, we're seeing that more and more. If you're on social media and you think that it's a real person that is attaching itself to a comment that you have, and then if you're not educated enough, and we feel bad for the seniors, they're clicking on things. I'm getting emails sent to me saying, hey, you've got someone that's kind of trolling on there. We clicked on it. Don't want to say what they opened up to, that they're not wanting to be led into that dark tunnel, but we keep saying it's a dangerous thing, it's a scary thing to feel who in the world is out there talking to us? Is it even a real human being? And that's what's taking over. We in the media talked about artificial intelligence, whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing. You have thoughts on both sides of the aisle. I think it's dangerous. I think it's cutting out jobs left and right. And I've talked to a doctor about what's it going to do to the medical field, what's it doing in the arts and Hollywood, and it's across the board, it's affecting all of us. And we're trying to figure out, as we go to 5th generation, 6G, what's still coming?
When we get into 6th generation warfare, if we don't get some kind of hold on this now, and a lot of people think we're really slipping deep into 6, but I think, and just to explain so people don't know, generations of war, no different than generation of people. We have Gen Xers, Boomers, Millennials, so on and so forth. Generations of war are the same. We started out pre-gunpowder, then gunpowder started us into the 2nd generation, and then as each technology changes, we move into a different generation of war. We like to say that everything is weaponized until something better can be weaponized. That's a rule, write it down, it's not going to change. Everything is weaponized until something better can be weaponized. The thing that can be weaponized now is the thing that is influencing you, which are these systems. A lot of times you'll see something that starts on social media, starts on the internet, next thing you know, it's in your workplace, it's in your groups, it's in the people you're talking to. Nobody's ever talking about how did they get that idea in their head. And that's how they got their idea in that head. Now, who launched that idea? Many times it's a foreign government just trying to break down the confidence in the United States has in their institutions, in their history, in their culture, and they have to break that down because they want to replace it. This is how the country gets overthrown. It's not going to be with a nuclear bomb. It's not going to be with an EMP. It's going to be with our own people deciding this is what they want. And as soon as they decide what they want, and that's one thing collapses, the other thing just comes right over top of it. This is what 5th generation warfare is all about. Once we get into 6th generation warfare, the world is basically ruled by autonomous drones and artificial intelligence and ruled by one rich king, controlling it all.
And one of the things that I think, Tim, that is, I feel one of the scariest things to watch is the trust factor, how much we are trusting of technology, that we're clicking on. You know, you get these notifications, don't download Messenger. You can have Facebook app, but don't download Messenger, and you're opening up this whole world. And then everyone does, it's kind of like you talked about, Boone, it's the addiction of, I think I'll be okay, I'll just try it. I'll pull it in, until what happens? Until it blows up.
Yeah, I'll give you a little anecdote on that. Is, you know, this probably happened to all of you guys at one point or another. You know, I'm sitting on Instagram, I'm doing my things, I get a message, I'm like, oh, my account's been hacked. Oh, okay. This is an official message from Meta. Oh, all right, that looks official. You need to recover your account by hitting this button. Okay, and I did, and boom, my account is gone. Immediately, all of my social media channels across Meta were taken, and I'm starting to get text messages on my phone saying, hey, would you like your account back? It will cost you about $50,000, yada, 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 right? But I was trusting because it had that Meta tag on it, right? And Meta, Meta is so much a part of my life. I'm on it every day, 4 to 6 hours, blah, 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 right? And I got bought into that.
Let me ask everybody a question. If somebody walked up to you and said, hey, somebody just picked the lock of your car, let me have your keys and I'll get it fixed. Would you give them your keys? You do it every day. You do it every day.
Yeah, so it's an amazing thing, the susceptibility of what, you know, is presented in front of you and your ability to sift through it as a filter, right? Because, you know, I want to naturally be a skeptic in everything that I look at, but I also have confirmation bias. I also have a lot of things that are going on internally in my own head that is not giving me the ability to be 100% critical thinking at all times. And I don't think I want to be 100% critical thinking at all times, but in some of these instances, I think there's so much coming, the inputs are so bad coming in that I cannot accept that the outputs are going to be any better, right? But one thing I'm encouraged about is, we live in the 21st century. I was born in 1978, I'm 45 years old. Most of my family is black. And we live in this time where we are crossing divides within this country, and it's being led by all the people that are in this room, right? And we are so much closer in terms of our culture than what people really want to believe. And we get so distracted by things that are such garbage that we could be doing better, right? And we could be doing better by the fellow person to our left and to our right. I challenge any one of you to walk past, when you leave this building, you will see it, a homeless individual on the street. I challenge you to stop and have a conversation with that person and find out what's going on in their head, right? And ask yourself, how can I do more for my fellow brother and sister that are citizens of this country, right? That is how we will be stronger. is leveraging the differences that we have and this ability to bring this pot closer and say, this is our treasure. This land and what we have been given here, this liberty that we have every day to do whatever we want, because I know I raised my hand to fight for everybody in this country, not a select few. Now, it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, black, white, it doesn't matter. That's what we are here for. And we can be better every day by making these choices.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's one thing that I think everyone has a tendency to lose track of, which is literally how I end my show every morning. Go out, be whatever you want to be in the world. You want to serve our country, great. You want to be a doctor, lawyer, doesn't matter your profession, but there's one thing that we can all be: kind. Go out and be kind. Be kind, and just spread that and find a way back to being a human, right? We're all one race, but back in the human race. But have we gone, I think this is the thing, people, how far have we gone, that how do we go back and find our way again if we've had so much brainwashing?
Well, it starts by accepting it, like any other addiction. You have to accept that it exists and then take action. And with any other addiction, you have to work at it every day. And if you know your kids and your family are in the same boat, you got to give them those challenges. Hey, can you put your phone down, not look at it for 2 hours, during waking hours, by the way. During waking hours, can you just put it away for 2 hours, not look at it at all? And if they can't, I make the same challenge, then okay, that's called addiction behavior. That thing you hear in your head saying all the justifications why you should pick it back up, that's an issue. That's an issue. So we have to so it starts with awareness, and then it starts with the ability to organize and mobilize. Once we organize and mobilize, and this becomes a movement and people start becoming human with each other again, the whole thing just devolves. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about an access point. An access point. I know to conduct psychological operations, I have to have the susceptibility of my target, and I have to have access to my target. Well, once we remove the access, then the accessibility or the susceptibility doesn't even really matter, because we've taken away the access. We all have the ability to choose what's happening right now. It's by access. Now we talk about artificial intelligence and things like that. It's other things too. It's fake news, it's deep fakes, it's all over the place. It's a lot of things. Too much for us to cover in 45 minutes. But we can do this one thing. We can remove the access point.
If we saw something was poison, we would stay away from it. That to me would be the blanket statement of, if you tell me this is poison, and when we are told in the media, or you have someone within your own family saying, that's not good for you, what you're reading, what you're hearing, or be careful clicking on that link, it can just wipe you out, you would stay away from that. But it's almost as if everybody's just too accepting, and we haven't questioned things. We need to question things more.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of just accepting things on blanket terms is nonsense.
Yeah.
But it's easy, right? That's the conundrum. It's like there's a lot of hard work in researching and having oh, you know what, I've read this article and there's something over here that's saying completely opposite. Which one am I going to believe? That's 9 times out of 10 what most people do, rather than wanting to say, hey, you know what is the real situation here? What is actually the conversation that should be being had, and that's important, right? To understand just the basic dichotomy of where are we? It's like in the military, for all of us that are out there, like, would you rather be operating on a 4-digit grid or a 10-digit grid? Well, 10-digit grid all day, right? Because I'm within precision. But we are in this ability, or in this world now, that 4 digits okay with me, and everything else is, it's bracketing. They'll get hit for frag, and it'll be okay.
Yeah, it'll be okay. We talked a lot about, in session 2 of the Systems Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare, how to fight artificial intelligence, how to break down all these structures. One, we do talk about getting away from your systems, but also we have a tutorial and we have a chapter on how to conduct open source intelligence, which is very important. Every citizen today should know how to conduct some sort of open source intelligence, just to be able to vet the information you're in front of. And the other thing, we did a chapter on human intelligence, how to collect human intelligence, because until we start talking to people that are in the areas that we want to know about and know how to talk to them and collect that information passively or even actively, then we're not getting accurate information, because they can put all that bad information through different sources. But what's to stop me from using the internet for good and trying to find, if something happens in St. Louis and it looks kind of crazy on the news, Well, how hard is it to find someone on Twitter that commented on a post that says, hey, I'm here in St. Louis, and then you just send them a message, hey, I'm just curious, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? What's the person on the ground seeing? Okay, and just using really, really basic human intelligence techniques to find that out. And the other thing, lastly, that's in the same guide is how to conduct a SCAME, or how to do SCAME, which is the propaganda report, the propaganda assessment. So you can look at what you're seeing and assess it for the propaganda it is, one way or the other, where it's white, gray, or black. And then you can truly make good decisions if you're using critical thinking. Is it important to know all these things? Yes. This is called literacy in our world today. Ignorancy makes you illiterate in the world today. That's how they get over on you. We have to make ourselves more literate, and we have to make ourselves understand what's happening in our environment.
Do you ever think, speaking of literacy, do you ever think that this would make its way in to where it really needs to be, which is with our younger generation, what their schooling? I mean, we're fighting over books that are pushing against our own beliefs at home, one part of it, but nothing like this is even being talked about. This is actually making its way into schools, has been for many, many years. Everything's turning into artificial intelligence. I mean, in China, we're being taught that teachers are the ones that are teaching the children in China. And people laugh, and I said, it's not funny. That's dangerous, that's what's getting ready to take over, and it's just these type of things being pushed in the education system.
It's on all levels. It's wherever messaging comes from, whether it's an AI, whether it's a person who's affected by a superstructure that wants to push a specific narrative, like in the news, and it doesn't matter what news station you listen to, they're all churches today. News stations are churches. That's, you can tell what religion somebody is by what news they watch. And they become that polarized because it's emotional. Everything's based on that emotionality, which we have to step away from. And that's why it's important to everybody to understand just a little bit on how to conduct open source intelligence, how to collect human intelligence, and how to understand what propaganda is, how to identify it, and even how to counter it if you want to.
These books, where are people able to get these?
Anywhere books are sold online.
What message, before we wrap up here today and take some questions, what message do you want people in this audience and that see this to walk away with?
I think the biggest thing is that, we've heard it before, it's a war for your minds, right? And if you do not get yourself out of the point of ignorance and get into the fight, then you have no one to blame but yourself. But there is hope, right? That we can get into a position that we can, push all of this aside and say, you know what? I'm going to focus on my neighbor. I'm going to go and hang out with my neighbor and just say hi and just see what's going on in their life. Maybe I'm going to call the charity down the street and say, you know what? I'm going to spend some time, doing some charitable work within my community and giving back to those that are less fortunate. That will get me connected in a much better way than a device that is, just spewing poison at every opportunity they can.
Getting out of our comfort zone. Yeah. That's the hardest thing. There's all these different challenges out there. One that was started here in St. Louis by the guy who owns First Form, and he started this 75 hard, right? Going into the military mindset of different things. But one of the things that he continues on is go to a grocery store and look somebody in the eye and say hello to them. Like you're saying here, Tim, it is you. I don't know your background, but let me say hi to you. And there's that kindness again, getting back long before we had technology, when we had nothing. Or go on a vacation, go to a resort that doesn't have a telephone, doesn't have a TV in it. That seems so foreign to people. And as you're talking about, Boone, it's because we're addicted.
We are addicted, and my final thought for the show would be this. If it was the 80s or the 90s or before, if your family was fortunate enough to have an Atari 64, you only had one of them, and all the kids had to share it, and everybody survived. We can do that again with these machines. And you could get on that Atari 64 when your homework was done and when after your chores have been checked. We can do this again. It's just basic parenting. But you also got to lead by example. If you're gonna call it out and say, hey, this is what's gonna be done and why, you got to lead by example and do the same thing with your kids.
Eye-opening for sure today. Again, Tim Jensen and Boone, we are wanting to open up now and take questions from all of you that have probably, besides three of you, first heard this term, fifth generation warfare. Questions to our two gentlemen here today. Yes.
Hi. So being a business owner, where's the balance? Because you are needing the social media
to help your business. We work with, I'm so sorry. So at Focus Foundations, we're looking for participants. You know, we're wanting that connection. Heck, we even use it so that after they graduate, we still stay in contact with one another, because we don't want that isolation. We don't want that vet isolated again. So where do you find that balance?
I think it really boils down to ethics, right? Are you using this for good? Are you using it, business, right? Grunt Style has over 400 employees, right? So through the advertising that we're doing and the spending to capture people in that space, we are selling a product that is able to enrich the lives of the people that make our product within the organization. So we're using that as a force of good, right? When you step into the boundaries of using it to manipulate people and space, I think you're outside the realms there, but it's unregulated. So people get upset when Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or these organizations say, "Hey, we're monitoring. We're putting monitors on it." Well, some of them are monitoring very biasly, right? We can't get past that. It's a private organization, but that is really the only regulation that we have within this country on advertising, right? Is these private institutions saying, "Hey, we don't like that you're posting this, and it goes against our community standards," and they're going to hold you against that, and they're going to be put in Facebook jail for 30 days or whatever the case may be, right? But those are bad actors, right? And you should call bad actors out when you see them. When you see a shitty post or some sort of sponsored ad come across your device, alert that, report that stuff. That's how you get it off the channels, right? And you can get it away from that, from being served into you, right? So now you're closing that door. So be mindful of how you're using these things. Again, there is the profit side and the business aspect of it, but use it for good and use it for your ability to influence people to do great things. Don't influence them to go do things that are going to bring harm to others.
I don't know your business model, but I do understand Grunt Style a lot. Worked with them for over a decade now. And I can tell you one thing that Grunt Style does that is very, very proactive and good is they make events. They get people away from their screens and face to face. If you have a business that's doing that, do that. Make events. And when you make that event, tell everybody to bring a friend that's not like them. And then we can start mixing together as a team. But what Grunt Style has been doing, use your powers for good, right? What they've been doing is pulling people together in the physical domain, which we still own. We still own the physical domain. They own the digital battle space, we own the physical domain. So take advantage of that digital space to push people into the physical domain, and then we can be human with humans again.
Can be empathetic to you, because many people have said social media, though, is fantastic for business. It's the way we get our word out, right? And I can see that. That's the head shaking I saw. And that's where you have to look for a balance, but it's also what you brought up earlier that's so important is research. Don't just accept, but research.
Yeah, and you're not the CCP trying to make political change inside of a country. You're a business owner doing business. There's a big difference. People should be aware that both things are happening.
Well, we're a nonprofit.
Good.
So we're not a business, but that's how we're connecting with our veterans.
You don't work for the CCP, do you? Then you're good.
Okay, who's next?
My introduction.
Right here in the back? Okay, yes.
They're passing around a microphone, everybody. So just wait for the microphone for your question.
So I know you guys mentioned something about healthcare. So how do we stop the social media usage? I would say abusage, because it's abuse. Healthcare providers that really don't want to work with veterans, and they are accepting veteran patients because of the amount of money they can, get back. And what I'm seeing now is there is more quantity over quality, and veterans are not getting quality health care, but they're using social media to drive it. And it's somebody who's putting big money into these big budgets versus me being in healthcare. My model is quality over quantity. So how do you compete with those other businesses that are using that social media because they have that big marketing budget to drive patients in? And patients don't stay, but they keep driving them in, and the purpose isn't great. It's not a good purpose.
Yeah, I think to start answer that question would be to target your audience, right, and understand what is your audience and how they consume information. From that position, start really building an authentic message into that audience, right? That's going to be able to cut through some of these inauthentic advertising dollars that are being dumped into the marketplace, and it's happening everywhere, right? It doesn't take much, right? And to beat a big budget, it's challenging, right? So the only way you're going to be able to do that is by connecting authentically to the audience that you're building messaging for. The second thing is the VA, right? The VA is, it's an interesting concept, right? It is getting better. I will say that, right? I think what we have with Secretary McDonough is probably one of the best secretaries in my time of being a veteran, and that's over about 20 years. And I'm very encouraged by his ability to address the current needs of the warfighter that are much different from previous cohorts. But the problem with the VA is that not every city provides the same level of care. You can go to Chicago and be involved in Hines or Brown, those facilities there, and get really under par service. Or go to San Antonio, Texas, where I'm living now, and go to Audie Murphy's VA, and you're going to get some of the best healthcare in the country. So you've got some disparities that are happening within the VA system that still need to be corrected, and they're making some earnest and honest changes there. But that's where the private industry is picking up those challenges, right? And they're dumping all sorts of information into this cohort, and they're leading them with potentially not the same quality or care, or even worse care for these veterans, and that's not fair either. So we have a problem that if the health of a country is determined by the number of people who are joining the military, right? As an adage that Washington said, and I probably messed that up, I'm going from memory. But, and certainly a country is measured on how they treat their veterans. Well, we don't have to look very far. We only have to take a couple steps over some that are sleeping on the street here to know that we are doing a horrible job with our veterans.
So I know you said VA, so I'm a former VA worker, employee. I work at St. Louis and Atlanta. I ran the visit in Atlanta for community care. I've also worked at Mercy Hospital for 17 years. I have over 23 years of healthcare experience and knowledge. So the problem that I see within the VA, it is not the employees so much. You have some really great employees that work for the VA. The problem that I see is there are more veterans than there are facilities, which is, that's the emphasis that started the community care program.
Yep.
They don't have a hold over that program, and the VA has a strong hold on what you can do as a community care provider. They give us full access to see the patient, but not to do what we need for the patient. So if you come in with you got pain in your arm and Dr. Kellum wants to get an x-ray immediately, I cannot send you anywhere else, and I cannot send you to the VA. I have to get an authorization from your primary care provider to actually get that x-ray for you. And you're in pain, and it could be days and it could be weeks.
Yeah. So, I could speak explicitly to this, through our work we did on the PACT Act. We were stakeholders in getting that legislation passed last summer, right around this time. And what we learned there during some of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee meetings was that there are like 18 leases that have not been actioned on within the United States, within the VA. So these are 18 facilities that would be dropped into significant areas where the demographics are needing that support, right? But it is Congress that has not released the money, right? So again, this is a matter of politics that are affecting the livelihood and the health of our veterans. That Congress has not released that money, because only Congress can release that money, specifically the House of Representatives, and they have not passed that. So these facilities, up until the PACT Act's passage, and we got that all taken care of, now that money's starting to flow through. So activism and getting involved in this is really how we change those opportunities. And let me tell you, what we did with the PACT Act, I didn't, a lot of people said it wasn't going to happen. And, a few of my friends that sat on the steps were damn sure going to make it a reality, and we did.
Well, thank you. It really works.
That was because you believed. Yes, sir.
Just an addendum to that, not all veterans qualify for veterans care from the VA. And that's one of the biggest injustices there ever is going to be. Because your generation, because of other generations, have been fighting it for forever.
Yes.
So we're where we're at now, and I'll say this, the VA sucks because the American people allow it to suck. And I'll just leave it at that. Now, 5G warfare, I read some interesting articles right around 9/11, when all that was going on. And I would challenge you, if you wanted to discuss, isn't the recent pandemic just a textbook, chapter by chapter by chapter, of how to influence and make populations do something that they had no idea they wanted to do? And now that we're dissecting it, it really comes down to liars and cheats and money.
I think we're seeing a lot of that. I think a lot of information is coming out, but that's with any major. I agree with you. I'm not dodging your question. I agree with you, but I'm also going to say it doesn't matter. We look back over time. Any major operation, whether it be the United States takes on or the world takes on, information comes out over time, and then people see what it was for what it was. It comes out over time. At that time, a lot of people said, hey, whoa, I'm raising the red flag, this is this, but people couldn't see it. I think as time goes on, the truth does come out, and more people will see it for what it's worth. I'm not above thinking maybe I'm wrong. So I need to use my own critical thinking as new information comes out and see it for what it is, and make sure we don't politicize it too much, and just call it for what it is and be very, very real with it. And it may go completely against what I previously believed, but I have to be open to what that is as information comes out over time.
All right, we have time for one more question. No? Oh, okay, right here.
So I want to circle back to an earlier question. I think it was the first question that was asked. As a business owner, not necessarily in how we promote, but how we live. 12, 16 hours a day is connected to our device because that's how we do business, whether it be social media or whatever. What do you recommend that business owners can do to disconnect, to safeguard themselves from that extensive amount of use?
Well, let me put it in context. When we're talking about stepping away from the machine, we're not talking about that's where your business is. And if that's where your business is, that's where you go to work every day. That's your business. We're talking about people who are just there because they got nothing else to do. Or they choose not to do other things because they're on these systems. That's where the real issue is, where people are not living their lives and they're just constantly being bombarded with these messaging that is truly psychological programming. So for your instance, watch, everybody's going to be a business owner now. I can't get off, I'm a business owner now. Back to the addiction cycle. So so in your instance, obviously, that's where you go to work. That's your business address, is your URL or your social media accounts. That's a different thing we're talking about. What we're talking about is people making themselves too accessible to our adversaries for manipulation. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I think, as a business person, I see this a lot in my business, sharing information. Right? Make sure that you're doing the studious work. Right? Just don't blatantly share things that that align to something that's speaking to you, because I've seen several businesses over the last 4 years that have stepped into that trap and have imploded. Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, they're shutting down their doors, and all those beautiful people that were reliant on that business have nothing, and now they're having to pick up the pieces and figure out what's next. So that's a problem, right? So be mindful of the things that you're sharing. And I think this goes for everybody. It's just not just, being a business owners, be careful of the things that you share. Mm-hmm. Just be critical be a skeptic at everything that you're seeing, right? Mm-hmm. And do the work to do the research and that extra bit of critical thinking That extra bit of research will take you a long way and save you from a lot of egg on your face, or having to say I'm sorry, or saying, oh man, you know what? I didn't know he was a racist. Like how many times have we seen that in the United States over the last 2 years, and especially within social media? People, it's crazy.
If you see something that makes you emotional, stop. Give it 72 hours. Okay, that breaking news, that clickbait you guys see, give it 72 hours. See what presents itself over time. Give it 72 hours. If it's still there, then spread it around. Otherwise, you have something called IO fratricide, information operation fratricide. That means friendly fire. You're creating problems for the people who are on your side of the team.
Yeah. And the last thing I would leave would be this: is like, we live in a construct, right? This construct is of our own making, and we have the ability to shape that construct however we want it to be. I have my own perceptions that if you want to talk to me offline, I would be happy to share with you. But the constructs of this world are what we make of it, and it's what we do, and your involvement is what's going to shape what's next.
What they're talking about, I will tell you, from a media standpoint and what journalism used to be, it's a shell of itself. It is a joke of what it is now, and it's literally the brainwashing that we're talking about in the technology. It's happening in the media, yet you're believing what the media is saying on whatever side of the aisle that you're on, and it is that brainwashing aspect. And then if you want to see your personal life or your business life completely crumble, just randomly share, like, comment, and don't even, oh yeah, my friend said this, I'm going to like it, I'm going to love it, and then watch what happens when it comes crumbling back on you. I, at the end of my show, say, please share, follow, if you align with our mission. I love that you said that. And if it aligns with you, then do so. But we're spreading positivity. We're spreading information that will help your mind, your body, your spirit. That will all be helpful. And going back to that whole kindness thing. Well, we've talked about a lot of things, and we have now educated you on 5th generation warfare, and only 3 of you before today had ever heard of it before. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have a panel here on the stage, and we're going to see if anybody's mindset changed in any way of what you heard here today. So stay with us.
Grunt Style Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving and supporting America's military community. With a focus on veteran and active duty service members, the Grunt Style Foundation provides resources for mental and physical wellness, food insecurities, transition and sustainment, and veteran homelessness. Join Grunt Style in their mission to give back to those who sacrifice so much for our country. Visit their website today at gruntstylefoundation.org to ensure no veteran is left behind.
Welcome back. Well, we've just had an incredible discussion with Tim Jensen and Boone Cutler about 5th generation warfare, something many in this audience had never heard of before. We now have a panel of guests of all veterans, and we want to hear, coming in here, how are you thinking? And are you going to walk away today with a different mindset? So let's start with you, ma'am.
Coming in here, I didn't know about 5th generational warfare, but I can say that I am making my way to not so much participating in 5th generational warfare in my own practice, in my own clinic. We do things kind of old school style. We're not the huge social media brats there. We have a very relaxing environment. We still run off of paper. Because of the neurological problems that veterans have. We also believe in that bedside manner more than 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes 30 to 45 minutes to see a patient. So we are getting away from, in the healthcare space, of you have to see 60 patients a day, which is what I'm hearing from most medical providers. I don't understand how there could be a continuity of care. And they're lacking that in most facilities. And so we keep it very old school. We don't have you check in on a kiosk. We have someone to check you in. We have someone to actually talk to you and speak to you. We are very old school, and I like to keep it that way. I think that the world has gotten away from just talking to each other, getting to the bottom line, the problem of each other. And it's too much arguing, it's too much fighting, it's too much social media rants and raves. And so we don't do that. And I don't do that. And when I do use social media, if anyone knows me, it's usually positive messages every day. And people know me in St. Louis, Missouri for being very positive. I speak positive thoughts. I come in my clinic and everything is positive. It's jazz music. It might be Steve Harvey on the back, deal or no deal, but there's no warfare, there's no anything, there's no politics. It's a safe free zone for people and veterans to be veterans and to connect with each other.
All right, Chaplain.
Okay, wear quite a few hats. My name is Byron Watson, they call me Sarge. I am also a military veteran. I'm also a veteran with the police department. I was a police officer for 35 years here in this county. I retired in 2008. I came back as a police chaplain in 2016. And so my experience with social media really revealed what they were talking about on the panel. My father passed about 2 years ago, and I was on social media a lot and more than I really realized I was. I was there hoping to connect with people like most people here. I was trying to avoid a lot of the negativism, some of the things that were just flat out racist that I saw on the internet that kind of turned me away a little bit. And after my father passed, I wanted to take a break away from social media because I was just really just grieving the loss of my father, and I wanted an opportunity to just sort of spend some time, with God and being able to get back to what I do. And one of the things I realized when I turned off social media, I turned it off for about 6 months. 6 months I didn't look at it, I never turned it on, and there was two revelations that I immediately noticed. My blood pressure went down. That was the first thing. I went to the doctor and he says, man, what are you doing? Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Your blood pressure is the best it's ever been. I said, you're kidding me. He says, what have you done? I said, I really haven't done it. Oh, you know what? I'm not on social media like I used to be. He said, that's one of the reasons. Social media can cause you to become emotional, can cause you to get angry, can cause you to be frustrated. And in the process of all of that, you're actually raising your blood pressure and you don't even know it. The time that I was spending on social media was about 6 hours a day. I didn't realize I was spending that much time. That's time I could be doing God's work. That's time I could be praying. That's time I could be doing something productive. So this has really opened my eyes, and I hope that this is something that we share with the multitude of people, because I do believe we are being brainwashed. Social media has become the worst thing, in my opinion, that's ever been invented to me, because it's done a lot of bad, a lot of division. I have never seen us, I'm old enough to remember, when we were able to agree to disagree. I'm old enough to remember that Republicans and Democrats, they disagreed, but they didn't hate each other. We are now becoming enemies in our own country. When I raised my hand to go into the military, I didn't say I was going to fight for this politician or I was going to fight for this politician. When I was in a foxhole with one of my comrades, they didn't ask me what my political affiliation was or whether or not I was able to agree with what their feelings were. So I think when we get in the heat of battle, a lot of politics and race and all of the things that we spend so much time talking about, it really doesn't matter when things like that occur. So this has really been eye-opening. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So I'm an Army airborne vet, airborne air assault. This is Gunner, Gunners with Dogs on Duty. And he flunked out of being a service dog and became a therapy dog. So the lady knew I went and did a lot of things, so she knew I would be a good ambassador and Gunner would be a good ambassador. So recently I was down in Panama and went back. I actually met my wife in Panama, bad at Spanish and afraid of heights. So jumped out of planes and married a Spanish girl. But when we went down in Panama, someone told me, like, there aren't any more pirate ships. like the gold's being stolen, but it's not with pirate ships anymore. So, like on the digital, the warfare arena has changed drastically. And then I also started thinking, like, I had a couple conversations with people lately, like the people assigned, who made our country, they're like 18 to 22 years old. The people who fought in World War II and jumped out of planes and stormed Normandy and were in foxholes, and they're 18 and 22 years old. These guys were leading our country. And so we've like stupefied our youth, and which is the crazy. I know there's a lot of brilliant 18 and 22-year-olds out there. I actually talk to them every day. But, that is what we're up against. Like the people that we took to run our country, we went take to run our shop, and which is a crazy thing. And then it's also about just getting people out together, veterans, getting them side by side. And then so I'm actually part of Freedom Jam. This is my plug. No, I'm actually part of Freedom Jam coming up on September 30th. It's just getting people out, listening to country music, getting people around. There's Kayak with a Vet, September 16th. Out in Creve Court Park, just getting veterans together, around each other, away from social media, side by side, battle buddies, and it doesn't make a difference. Thursday, I'm going up to Coffee Talk in Troy. Coffee Talk every Thursday, 8 o'clock. There's 150, 160 veterans there, and they're all different military and different wars, different branches, whatever, and they're all coming together away from social media because they're all over 70, so they don't know how to work the damn thing. So, anyway, that's my story.
I got 5 seconds. Yeah, my name is William Samuelson. I'm actually Sarge on the Stone Daves podcast. I'm a 20-year infantry veteran and retiree. And it's interesting because I've heard everybody so far up here in the focus group talk about connection, basically. I'm fairly familiar actually with 5th generation warfare. One of my assignments, I helped teach some counterinsurgency stuff. And I don't care if you're reading Fate of Empires by Sir John Glubb or any of those things. We're kind of at a place in history that is cyclical. And if you look at the things that have consistently been done, it's dividing and creating the other, and we're in a situation of the other. And I really feel the best way to do that is on the individual level. Everything we've talked about today, or we've listened to rather, we've been discussing macro, right? Kind of big picture, but to shape the operational environment, they're usually trying to vector on individuals at a time. And one thing we did when we started the Stone Daves podcast was find common ground. You can find common ground and have a conversation with anyone. There's that old saying that a person is smart, but people are stupid. I promise you, everybody has family, everybody has kids, everybody has beliefs. You can find commonality with anyone. And so, yeah, disconnect and take the point to have your own individual civic responsibility for your family, for your kids, and for your country.
Well said, sir. My name is Jeff. I'm a small business owner. Own multiple different businesses in Arnold, Missouri. 22-year Army veteran, retired as a reservist. I got some active duty time in there as well. I think the biggest takeaway for me today, and I did not know what 5th generation warfare was, but now I do. Well, let me rephrase. I didn't know the title, but we all know what it is. Putting a name to it helps. But what hit most with me, I think, is the family perspective and what we're doing with our children. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and yes, I am 48 years old, so I started late in life. Established, correct? Established. But it's critical that I've identified that the problems that we've talked about and we've heard of from the panelists, or this group so far, the focus group, and then the panelists. It's critical that we make sure that we're passing that on down to our children as well. Like my children don't get social media, they don't get tablet time, they get outside time, they get time with mom and dad. I think that's a huge part of what we have to do as a society, as well as Americans, is make sure we're teaching our youth the proper way to be a family, that nuclear family again. And I get it. Not all of us come from 2-parent households. Some of us come from 0-parent households. But teaching our youth about the dangers of society while not scaring them, and using technology to babysit, for lack of a better word, is honestly unacceptable. Until that becomes unacceptable as a societal norm, unfortunately, we're going to keep going down the rabbit hole. So my contribution to society is to raise at least 2 children that understand principles and values and parent time, and the way that mom and dad say it is the way that it is. I don't really care what Timmy's doing or what Jack's doing on this TV show that you watch. It's about what we do, and it's about what we spend time with and how we raise those children. That's the biggest thing I took away from this, other than putting a name to what we already know exists.
My name is Anthony, so I am Reverend on the Stoned Apes podcast, and I wanted to kind of tell on myself a little bit because I knew a lot about the concepts that we were talking about today, but I never heard it called fifth generation warfare. And so being an advocate for critical thinking, I think we've all seen Social Dilemma on Netflix. I watched that, and then becoming an advocate for critical thinking and understanding the dangers of what confirmation bias does and how that pushes us down the rabbit hole and gets us into encampments and tribalism and all those things. But here recently, I had the opportunity to go on vacation, and I went out to the Gila National Forest in New Mexico, and I spent a little over 7 days completely isolated with no cell phone at all. And one of the biggest moments of revelation for me is on my way back on day 7, I had a 2.5-hour drive before my cell phone came back to signal. And then I had something very unexpected happen. I had a panic attack. And that really showed me what kind of assault is waiting for you in the other side of that phone. Because as a business owner myself, I'm connected to my phone 24/7. I don't leave it. It doesn't leave my side. So getting that disconnect for that period of time, then coming back into it. So since I came back on that vacation, I've been very aware of my cell phone usage, and I've been monitoring myself and taking safeguards and doing things like Boone was talking about, putting it up on the charger when I get home, not keeping it with me the entire night. But I think what this particular telecast did for me is it really helped me understand the danger that I'm in, and it made me identify an enemy now that makes me want to defend against it even more. Because now I realize that my reaction wasn't unwarranted. I am under assault. And that, I think, is important and is something I want to educate more people about.
My name is Ron Partain, and I have a podcast as well. And I actually was familiar with fifth generation warfare. I bought the book before it actually came out and read it. So I'm eagerly anticipating the second one. I look at information. Information today to me is, I look at the way that it's presented, and it's presented with emotion. And people attach emotion to information, and therefore, when emotion is attached to information, you are given information that contradicts the thing that you're emotionally tied to, you reject it instantly, or you get furious. And I think that goes to what you were talking about. I think when with people they can't handle information, they can't talk about it with each other. They can't have intelligent conversations with the Democrat or Republican or whatever ideology. Now people associate more with political party than they do with country. It's like we're not Americans, we're Republicans or we're Democrats. We're not Americans anymore. And looking from a racial perspective, you go back to look at what they did, how they classified Americans with different skin colors back in the 90s. It was black people in the 80s. It was African Americans in the 90s. Hispanic Americans, Italian American, whatever. They started to segregate us by the use of words, and that's exactly what has happened now. We're now 20 years, 30 years removed from that. And one of the big things that I'm passionate about is like communism and how the system has worked against and manipulated people, really going back back into the progressive era of the 1920s. I just recently was looking at some information. Many of you probably have never even heard the name Norman Dodd. Norman Dodd was a guy who was working on the Reese Committee, and the Reese Committee was a politician in. Reese was a politician, I think, in Tennessee, and what they were doing is they were analyzing what the foundations that were created back in the 20s were, what their goal was, and they were very open about it, that they were trying to merge the Soviet Union with the United States. That was what their goal was. And you look at guys like Yuri Bezmenov. Yuri Bezmenov was a Soviet defector, and he was interviewed in 1984 by George Griffin, and he talked about the four stages of tearing down a society. And the first one was demoralization, and it takes 20 years to do that. And why does it take 20 years to do that? Because that's how long it takes to educate one generation. The powers that be literally had all of that stuff done. He said, and by 1984, they had already trained 3 generations of American youth, and that is pumping in their brains essentially Marxist ideology without any American counterbalance. And you look at what they've done. They've taken God away from our society. They've taken our pride of patriotism away from us, from most of us. And they've destroyed the nuclear family. And that was the entire goal. And we are so far away from that. And that's especially why 5th generation warfare is such a big deal. Because essentially what it causes is it causes analysis paralysis. You're so loaded down with information, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And then you just go back to what your confirmation bias is. And your confirmation bias is basically everything that you've read up to this point that's associated with emotion. So you can't think, you can't even learn to think. We can't think critically because we're not taught to think critically. In fact, we're actually not taught to think critically. Charlotte Iserby, if you guys have never heard of Charlotte Iserby, she wrote a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. That was in 1980s. I mean, we are living proof of what 5th generation warfare has done to us. But it's been going on for a really, really long time. And I'm so grateful to you guys for writing that book and helping to educate people on what we're facing. So anyway, that's what I have to say.
Ron, thank you, all of you veterans. And being in the media as long as I was, one of the things from a good journalist standpoint and a good interview standpoint is to watch people. So while all of you were talking, I've watched each and every one of you, and your faces were softened. I saw you shaking your head. We all came in here with different mindsets on both sides or in the center of the aisle, and it's interesting to watch this room. And if we could continue to do this times thousands and millions, we can all come together and just listen. When I was in television during the beginning of the pandemic, and then what we've seen here in St. Louis, we talk about Ferguson, Missouri, and I don't care what's, right? You all did it. It doesn't matter what state you're from, you knew about it. It was on the cover of major magazines all across the country, and everybody quick to judge, and then very quick to stop talking to each other, and then very quick to have disrespect with one another. I asked at a station that I was at for the last few years to sit down and do just this, to have a panel. I thought it would be paramount that we needed to do it. I would be the moderator. We would have someone on one side that greatly respected the police, another side that was very against the police, and how do we come together and how do we talk? And immediately it was squashed of a discussion that happened in the newsroom. Oh, let's do this. One of the bosses thought it was a great idea, and then the very small minority said, nobody cares about the police. And they immediately said, okay, well, we won't do it. I know that's disheartening to you, but that's the reason why we never did the panel. But thank you, Boone. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Grunt Style, for bringing this together, because this is what needs to happen. And when someone speaks up and says, we need a panel, we need to be kind to each other again, we need to open up our minds, and we need to just listen. Listen is what we need to do. Yes, Ron?
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
Go ahead. I wanted to address something that you said about coming together and talking. What I have found is that if you find somebody that you disagree with, find something that you do agree upon, and then compliment them on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you compliment them on it and say, "Oh, you're so smart to know that," and then what that'll do is that'll soften that'll break down the wall. And then if they think that you think they're intelligent, then you can present them with an alternative perspective, and they will take you more seriously.
Absolutely, always.
I was asked to clarify from the wings, so I'm going to clarify from the wings. When we talk, Mike, what you said was exactly right. But when we're talking with people and we're talking about the mindset of what you want to do, to talk to people from different points of view, here's the deal. Realize that that person is speaking from a frame of reference. And that frame of reference exists for a reason. It's their life experience, it's what they've been taught, it's where they've grown up, all these things, which may be different from yours. And what you're telling them is your frame of reference. We're not talking about what the gospel is, we're talking about frame of reference. And the way you get past that, if you and I have something that we don't see eye to eye on, if I realize you're talking about your frame of reference, you're not attacking me. You're talking from your frame of reference. Secondly, if I care more about understanding your frame of reference than I do proving mine, we can get along. And that's how we do it. You've got to care more about understanding the other person's frame of reference than about proving your point.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to
All right,
finish
Boone.
with.
Thank you so much. All of you veterans, thank you so much. We're going to wrap up with this. Thank you all for coming together, but we've only scratched the surface of one part of how we bring the whole balance of life together, and all do find that way to kindness. This has been the Mind section. When we return next time that you see us, it will be focusing on the body. Remember, you can find out more about the wonderful work that these gentlemen and these women do by going to gruntstylefoundation.org. Thank you so much for tuning in.